All right, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar today. Really excited about this grant round and hope the changes we made result in a positive experience overall. And I'd like to, before we go forward, I'd like to introduce folks on the call with me. I'll be joined by my co-host, Carol Martinez. Fanny Yang will be note-taking. Shalini Kanan will be moderating the question and answer section of this webinar. And Trish Chapman will be assisting with questions as well. So why don't we go ahead and move forward. The purpose of this webinar is to go over the renewal RFP, which is meant for grantees with active ETC projects and grants. So if you don't have an active ETC project, you'll want to attend the standard RFP webinar this Friday, January 21st. Just as a brief outline of what we're going to be taking care of today, we're going to go over the ETC Renewal RFP overview, some elements of the application, and the question and answer section. It's going to be fairly quick, so we should have a lot of time for questions and answers.
So our webinar logistics, we ask that you please input all of the questions into the chat box. We will address questions regarding the application and anything else that we've discussed during the webinar at the end of the webinar in the Q&A format. And just so that everyone is aware, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website afterwards.
So since you all have projects with us, you're all familiar with the ETC grant program. But just as a refresher, the ETC grant program was developed with the intent of improving coastal access for people and communities who face systemic challenges or societal barriers to enjoying the coast. Our desire is that through this program, participants can create joyful coastal experiences that will have positive long-term impacts.
So the purpose and the goal, as mentioned earlier, of the renewal webinar, of the renewal application, this year, the California State Coastal Conservancy is offering a shortened application process for organizations that currently have an Explore the Coast grant from the Conservancy and want to apply for funding to extend this existing grant. The goal of the renewal is to offer a pathway for existing grantees to increase the award amounts and extend the terms of their grants to remove the burdens associated with the annual grant program cycle. The funding for this application comes from the Budget Act of 2021, which allocated $14 million of state general funds to the Coastal Conservancy for the Explore the Coast program. We anticipate that approximately $9 million will be awarded for this year's grant round for both the renewal application and the standard application. The Conservancy is usually able to allocate approximately around $700,000 per year from other sources to support an annual ETC grant round. The program is regularly oversubscribed, however. So with the need of greatly exceeding amounts of funds. This year, the 2021-2022 general fund allocation will enable support for many projects to help communities access and enjoy the coast and the San Francisco Bay shoreline, as well as launch an anticipated 2 years of the Companion Coastal Stories grant. Staff anticipates offering grant rounds for both ETC and Coastal Stories in 2022 and 2023.
So now we'll move on to the application segment of the webinar. And before we go into the application, there's a few points that I'd like to just point out. As Carol mentioned, we'll have approximately 9 million available for the entire grant round. We'll have a maximum award of $100,000 for each year that the program will be renewed for. Projects can start in late 2022 or early 2023 with an expected completion date of February 2026. Don't forget that applications are due Friday, March 11th, 2022. And selected proposals will be presented to the Conservancy Board for funding, for approval for funding in fall 2022, which is similar to the way we do it for our standard grant round process. And just to note, projects must be similar to existing projects. I'm going to stop share and share the application itself. So the application portion of the renewal is pretty stripped down. If you look at the first page, you'll see it's just some really basic contact information and some just notations for the amount being requested, total project cost, start and end date, and expected completion date of the existing grant. As you'll see in the second page, we're asking for a project description. This is really just a really quick summary of your project, where you explain the total number of participants served, participant activities, key objectives, so on and so forth. It's largely existing already in your work plan, so this should be just a brief update. Question 2 will be an update to the activities of your program. So any changes you've made since the start of your work and changes that you'll be making so that you can adapt to pandemic issues. The ETC priorities communities section is similar to what you've all seen before in the previous application. Total number of participants, total number of participants from priority communities, and you'll be estimating all those numbers in this table. And then we ask that you provide us an updated work program, one that takes into account the new updated budget and everything else that's changed since the beginning of your grant. Question 5 is just to explain any pandemic related adaptations that you all may have made or are planning to make in anticipation of any health restrictions. Photos you can submit to us if you'd like. They're not required, but they always help. And finally, this is your renewal checklist. As you can see, it's just the application, the draft work program, and any supplemental photos that you'd like to share.
Rogelio, we have a request that you speak up if you can.
Oh, okay. Will do.
So as far as eligibility for this program, the Explore the Coast grant renewal application is available to applicants with existing and active ETC grants, as mentioned before, that have demonstrated the ability to successfully implement their program. As with normal ETC projects, projects must involve visiting the coast of California or the shore of San Francisco Bay. The Conservancy is very interested in supporting programs that bring participants to the coast throughout the state. And only extensions of the projects funded by an existing Explore the Coast grant are eligible for funding provided by this RFP. Any project that is not currently funded by the Explore the Coast grant is ineligible to use this ETC renewal application, and instead prospective applicants will be referred to the standard ETC application. Please let us know in the chat box if you do need the link to the standard application, and we'll be happy to provide that. We encourage for applicants to contact the program manager that you're currently working with, or contact Explore the Coast if you have any questions regarding the renewal eligibility of your project.
So yeah, I'll briefly describe the scoring criteria, which is fairly streamlined. Since you all have already gone through the standard review process for your projects, during their respective grant rounds, renewal proposals will be assessed through a set of criterions, including the following: billing and administrative practices, communications responsiveness, timeliness of project delivery, ability to adapt to pandemic restrictions. And just to note, your existing project managers will be conducting this review, and those of us on the internal ETC committee will be assisting if there are any questions about your project.
So we have many resources for applicants to use during their application process. And this is all stated in the application. We encourage applicants to review the Conservancy grant terms before completing your application. Please note that the insurance requirements for the ETC grants, and if the requirements result in higher insurance premiums for the applicant, this cost can also be included in the grant budget. And we're also going to be providing assistance with the application in many different ways. So we suggest that grantees who are submitting renewal applications contact their current program managers for if they have any questions. The Conservancy does not automatically disqualify an application if it is missing a required element. In these cases, the Conservancy will request the missing information and provide a deadline for submittal. If multiple parts of the application are missing, however, it will be considered ineligible. This year, we're also doing technical assistant office hours to answer specific grant questions and provide guidance with application preparation to potential applicants. And the technical assistance office hours will be held on Zoom as well. And for the renewal application, this will be on Friday, February 4th from 3 to 4 p.m.
That brings our presentation to a close. We've allocated a few minutes to answer any questions, particularly those that you've put inside the chat box. Please use the chat box because it's a lot easier for us to manage the questions and answers in this way. And don't forget the March 11th due date.
There's some questions in the Q&A already, so are you ready to answer them, Rogelio and Carol?
Yeah, let me.
Okay, so there's two questions that are kind of asking for clarification on what we mean by the same project that they're extending. So would it be considered the same project if they're planning on using a different partner? This is a question from Lori Torrio, and their existing grant is for camperships with a specific partner. And so now they plan to use a different partner.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Lori. And yes, this would pretty much be the same program. As grantees, you all can adjust your partnerships as long as they still meet our, they're still able to meet the requirements of the grant. Trish, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Well, I was just going to say that if the change in partner changes the community you're serving, then that's not potentially eligible. So I think we might need more information about what your program is and who the partner you're changing away from, it, that kind of information. So you could give us more information right now, or you could follow up with afterwards.
And then the related question is from Claire McMurtry, and she asks, regarding applying for the same project, could you say more about this? For example, if the specific locations we would travel to may change, or an aspect like whether it's overnight versus single day trips, but the content and structure of the program are designed the same, will that work? Some locations and timings are more and less ideal with COVID.
Thanks for that question, Claire. I think this is generally what we've been doing throughout the course of your projects already. So the way I understand it, this would still be the same or similar project. You know, the location still has to be within proximity to the coast. So if you were intending on switching from, let's say, Sonoma Coast to somewhere further inland, that would be a change that we wouldn't be able to approve. So as long as you are able to keep your location to the coast, it could change from somewhere in Sonoma to somewhere in Marin. It should be totally fine as long as the content and structure are still the same.
Thank you. And another question from Claire is regarding the application for question 2 that asks about changes. She wants clarification of whether these changes are changes that were made for the previous/existing grant, or changes that are anticipated for the upcoming renewal period.
They would be changes for the upcoming renewal period.
Okay. Somebody, an anonymous asker, asks, would we be able to apply even if we have yet to begin our current Explore the Coast grant? So maybe their project was selected and they got their grant agreement, but they haven't started work.
Trish, would you be able to take this question, please?
Yes, we've said yes. If you if you have been awarded a grant, whether or not it's started or not, you can apply through the renewal program.
Thank you. A question from Michelle Markman. Could this fund the next step in a multi-year program?
That's a great question. Trish, can you comment on this?
I think that we might need more information from Michelle. So either that she could type it, or I don't know if we can allow her to speak.
Carol, would you be able to bring Michelle into panelists?
Yes. Let's see. Okay, Michelle, you should be able to unmute and speak.
Hi, so we have a multi-year dive into science program that we have the first year of it funded by an existing Explore the Coast grant. Could this fund the next year of this grant or the next 2 years of this of our program? I mean, because it would be the same partner on the program. And so essentially the same demographics, we're just taking them to the next step of our program.
I think the answer is yes, but I guess I still don't really understand what the difference between the current step and the next step is. So is it like that
Well-
you're a different kind of content, or
Well, it's a progressive content. We teach kids how to, we teach youth how to scuba dive and then train them in citizen science projects on the coast in Northern California. Well, we do it all over California. So the first step is, you know, kind of a more basic program that gets them in a comfort zone with diving and begins their training. The second year would be a more in-depth program, and then it leads to a scientific diving certification.
I think we might have to get back to you on that one.
Okay. Okay. Should I talk to my project manager or?
I'm gonna say Virgilio will get back to you after we confer with more people.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I'll just say that for us, the being able to offer the renewal grant is because your projects have all been through our advisory board review process. And so if the project changes away significantly from what the advisory board felt was worth funding, that's kind of where we push projects into the new round of the other round of ETC funding. And so I think that's the question we have to grapple with. for
Okay,
yours.
yeah, if somebody do you want to call me after this, or how do you want to set this up, or should I contact you and talk further about what our program is?
Yeah, Michelle, do you happen to have my email address?
I believe I do. If not, well, why don't you give me your email address?
Yeah, let me send that to you. In the meantime, Shalini, you can go ahead and move to the next question.
Okay, and maybe a question that might be relevant to everybody here. If there are questions about eligibility, like if the program is similar but kind of different, should they just plan to reach out to their project manager or the Explore the Coast email? Maybe you can have a...
Yeah, I think if you have a project manager that you can contact directly, that would be a good place to start. Otherwise, do reach out to us through the Explore the Coast program email, and one of us will get back to you. Yeah, start with your project manager. They should be able to help you with any eligibility questions that you have and be able to meet with you separately.
And Carol, can you remind us what the Explore the Coast email is?
Yes. Actually, I think I need to look it up myself. Virgilia, do you know off the top of your head? We just made it.
Yeah, let me try to find that.
I can actually send out an email to all attendees on this webinar with that information.
Great.
Yeah, so the email is explorethecoast@scc.ca.gov.
Thank you, Virgilia.
And Michelle, you can go ahead and just, send your question to that email address with an attention to me, and I'll reply to you directly.
Okay, so our next question is from Steve Miller, and it's a question around the budget. can we just build in an escalator, AKA a 5% increase each year in the budget? So I'm not sure if that means there would be an explanation for what that 5% goes to, or if it would just be a 5% unlabeled.
Yeah, I think we need more information, but the way I understand it is that if Steve is going to be increasing his budget by 5% each year, he'll need to provide justifications for that budget and his updated work plan, and also the application. Maybe if Steve is okay with it, he could elaborate on that question. Let's see.
Oh, hi there. Yeah, I'm just projecting into the future. We'll see expenses, vehicle rentals, food costs, some contracts, security, different things. I mean, I can project numbers 2-3 years in advance. So I can do that. So yeah, I'm just anticipating life gets more expensive. So, I mean, those will all be projections.
Right. I mean, I think that sounds reasonable. Again, your whatever budget increase or whatever your budget is, you just need to provide an explanation for what those increases are going to be. I mean, that's typically standard with our grants anyway. So I think it's totally allowable to increase your costs or charge an increase of 5% each year. Just provide an explanation for that in your application.
Great, thanks.
Oh, and also one bit of news that we just received recently is that grantees can now bill up to 20% of their grant award towards indirect costs. That's up from 15%.
Okay, our next question is from Michelle Markman. Would it be considered the same project if we plan to use a different target demographic group?
You want me to answer?
Yeah.
It would definitely be one we'd need to check. And so it's probably one you want to confirm with us before you commit to the renewal application. But I think the key consideration for us would be, is the new demographic group either equally or more an ETC priority community than your previous group? But if you decrease in serving our priority communities, then you wouldn't qualify. If you're laterally transferring, you probably would. But again, I think you should confirm with us before you commit to this route.
Thanks, Trish. And we have a question from Michelle Howard. Would you mind restating the definition of coast, specifically thinking about coastal zones inclusive of bluffs and watersheds?
I'll take that one.
Yeah.
First, I'll say that in normal years with different funding source, we have to be very strict on this because we have one funding source that's very strict on it. This year, we're using general fund monies, and there's a bit more flexibility. First, in addition to the outer coast, it includes all of San Francisco Bay coastline. We do, definitely include coastal areas like the bluffs above the ocean and things like that. As you've moved farther into like just a watershed experience, that's probably not us. But if you, yeah, so again, if you're changing from what you're currently doing to something that's not clearly the coast, you should confirm it with us.
Thanks, Trish.
And that's all the questions we have so far. Maybe we can give it a few minutes to see if anyone else wants to type in questions to the Q&A.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I have a question. Is the renewal application and the normal application, do they have the same due date?
Yes, they do.
Okay, so I think it might be wise if applicants are wondering if their project's eligible to do that sooner rather than later, because you might need to use the other application if you're not eligible for this one.
Exactly. Thanks for pointing that out, Shami.
Yeah, and kind of related to that is to clarify that not being eligible for this doesn't necessarily mean what you're proposing wouldn't be selected as an ETC project. It means it's different enough that we need it to go through our advisory board review process, the full review process, and not this accelerated renewal process.
Okay, here's a question from Michelle Markman. Please clarify the 100,000 per year, since prior grants had a 50,000 limit.
Sure. So because of this huge allocation that we received, we're allowing grantees to ask up to $100,000 per year, per every year that their grant will be sort of extended for. So if you're planning on activities to start in early 2023, you can essentially ask for up to $300,000 if the project will be completed by February 2026, or is intended to run the full length up to February 2026.
So does this mean that going into the future, we'll offer 100,000 per year instead of 50,000 forever?
Thanks for asking that, Shani. Unfortunately, it's hard to predict how much money will be allocated for the grant program going forward. So it's better to plan, for a standard grant program year, which is typically $700,000 allocated per year, or for every grant round. So going back from these huge maximum asks to our standard $50,000 cap for the entire round.
Thanks. Oh, here's another question from Amber Rich. Would boating experiences on waterways leading to the coast, such as the Sacramento Delta, be considered coastal? If not, would the San Francisco Bay define the inland boundary of coastal?
I know the San Joaquin Delta is included. Oh no, yeah. As long as it's along the shoreline, would that be a correct judgment on that, Trish?
I'm thinking, although I'm not 100% sure, that as long as it's within the 9-county Bay Area portion of the Delta, that it can be anywhere in that. But if you move beyond those counties, then that would be outside of our jurisdiction, so we could not vote that.
Okay, that's all the questions for now.
Okay.
Give it another minute.
And all you, please feel free to just to contact us, contact me, or contact um, your project manager to discuss whether or not your proposed program will qualify. They can work out all the details with you. And yeah, and if you have any other questions and would like a more group type setting, we plan on having a technical assistance office hours, so to speak, which Carol already mentioned during the presentation. So if you can think of questions between now and February 4th, that would be a good opportunity to ask them.
Okay, I'm still seeing no questions, so.
Okay. Well, we can call it a day for this webinar. And again, thanks for attending. And if you have any further questions, please contact myself, Carol, or your project managers, and we'll get things clarified for you. Thanks, everyone.